It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the empowered harmonizers. And we're zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, what happens when it gets really bad? What happens when you're really, really going further and further down the rabbit hole of despair? What really happens when things get really dark, gloomy, and really to the point where you don't even feel that you have a foothold, a handhold getting out of an emotionally abusive relationship with someone who is really borderline, covert narcissistic, or psychopathic? What do you do when it gets really, really, really bad? I mean, so bad that you feel that you don't have any opportunity left in life. Yes, the Grim Reaper is, basically knocking at your door, or you're feeling that low down, that lost. Really sort of, you have an emotional asphyxiation, meaning you can't really breathe. You can't inhale and exhale emotionally. You're really kind of being suffocated by an emotionally manipulative individual, and it's really setting you and your thoughts, your emotions, and then your behaviors down a very dark path. What happens when you really self-sabotage? You begin to really hurt yourself, get yourself into really tight situations. Self-harm, high-risk self-harm, self-loathing behaviors. Cutting, excessive drinking, doing illegal, illicit drugs, engaging in sexual activities that you feel ashamed of, that aren't love-based. Not only do we have like a hookup culture going on nowadays with the youth in Miami and a lot of these sort of festival-like behaviors, people are, especially the women, are becoming extremely violated. And not to say that men aren't, but it's really becoming a very, very, there's not a path to unconditional self-love. It's all based on what you do, and then it's almost as if, if your appearance fades, if what you do that one day fades, if what you don't do is not good enough fades, that, you lose all sort of relationships in life. And what happens when you get that low down? It's to understand, the point is, you need clarity. When you get, especially with the advent of the wonderful, incredible, inspiring Anthony Bourdain, an incredibly good-looking gentleman, carried himself with poise, grace, dignity, was a man of great palate, great culture, great courage, great, everlasting love to explore and fulfill his dark, his really sort of deep, dark desires. And the problem with Anthony Bourdain and Parts Unknown is so sad that he took his life while, just in the midst of preparing for his series, extremely wildly successful, seemingly on his right path in life. But, it's my feeling, and a viewer had asked that we kind of discuss this, and, I hope this isn't flagged for sort of controversial topics, because I don't want to get, real heavy, but really his burden was so heavy. His issue with life is that, especially with his substance abuse, I feel, it was just things hit too heavy. There was an impulsive side. In other words, what you saw in all his driving going forward, his great adventures into places like the Congo, Brazil, France, India, Malaysia, really introduced the world to all continents on foot, and just showing so much of his raw self. He really walked, though I feel, with a heavy heart. And especially in his self-disclosure, in, some of his videos when he was going back to his hometown in Parts Unknown, I would highly, highly recommend you watch that beautiful series on Netflix. And I don't want to, call it by the wrong name, Bear with me just one moment. I know a lot of, you want me to be prepared, but I also want this to be spontaneous. So bear with me one moment while I just confirm. Parts unknown. Yes, Parts Unknown. An absolutely incredibly fascinating show by Anthony Bourdain. I would recommend watching all of his videos. Not only will it give you a glimpse of culture, it'll give you a glimpse of the palette, it'll give you a glimpse of life around the globe. It'll also sort of clean your palette for what you've taken advantage of where you are. But furthermore, it's to understand, he reveals a little bit about himself and his snippets and his desires throughout the series. And it's particularly the series where he was going back to his hometown, which I believe is in Maine or Connecticut or somewhere out east. It's sort of a fishing village on the coast. I don't have a really strong memory for a lot of details. I take other things, from that series, personally. But he talks about, when he kind of took his first heroin. This is where, he says, this is where I bought my first heroin, and I knew that this day was coming. So it's to understand the psychology of when it gets really bad. In other words, a disordered thinking process. Even though you're wildly successful, if you have sort of, a thought pattern where you're sort of kind of, consciously and unconsciously giving yourself a way out. The mental illness, where, you're sort of stacking up for your own doomsday. In other words, if you have that feeling that that day is coming, Anthony Bourdain, he talks, about that. And then he reveals also, like in his show in Italy, when he was, on this deep sea adventure, and he really wanted to cook some very fresh live fish and octopus. So he and his crew went out off the coast in Italy, and the fisherman had like all this dead fish that he like threw into the water, and he's like, there you go, guys, look, it's right here, it's swimming. And he took that so hard because he wanted to do this incredible series that in that show, he tells you later that, basically he went back into the village and then, drank himself into a stupor, and then not only into a stupor, but to the point where he was like laying on the ground outside the restaurant. So he had a very, very heavy heart where he would then sabotage himself. As his drive went forward, the positive, he also had an inner drive inward that was much darker. So it's to understand that, that this is a certain type of mental illness, and we don't know the cause, but it is to understand that if things are that heavy, you need help. Don't try to, save yourself or think that you're just going to bob along on a raft or a life preserver while you're simultaneously preparing for your own kind of doomsday. And so that's really, really important to understand that that disordered thinking. And whether he's bipolar, I don't treat or diagnose, but that is really sort of a manic bipolar behavior where he's and he will reveal where he's sort of planning. So if you know anyone, or if you are suffering with this condition, you need to seek medical attention, and you need to also connect with the suicide hotline. I'm not giving out 800 numbers here. I want my viewers to be proactive, have your own skin in the game, get that number, have it in your phone, have it on your speed dial, put a nickname to it, and have a go-to place. It also brings me to the point that I highly recommend that when you're healing through a very emotionally abusive relationship, that you begin to create a mastermind group. Just like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, you need to be and surround yourself with like-minded people. You don't want to isolate and alienate yourself. You need to associate with like-minded people. Yes, they are out there. They are out there. The people who are supportive, who have your interests, who like to dissect and understand feelings, who like to appreciate music, who like to appreciate food, who like to appreciate conversation, coffees, teas, whatever little granular thing that you appreciate, you need to kind of get in tune and touch with and break through your own silence. Because it is really so devastating for you to waste your time idly and not surrounding yourself with a mastermind. So in other words, once 2 or 3 or 4 members or people, you come together like a cabinet. And if you haven't read that book, I would highly recommend you read that book, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's written in the early 30s. Incredible success tools and strategies for success are discussed in that book, including definiteness of purpose. So it's very important for you to understand your definiteness of purpose, but then understand that if you have some sort of demons or some sort of derogatory planning for yourself, begin to unwind that and don't give in to that coiling behavior. And get proper medical attention, and don't allow family members, to be the only ones. Sometimes family members want to kind of keep it hush-hush secret. You don't need help. Why are you around this guy? And they're, going to try to, blame it on other people. You really need to take accountability for that yourself. You have to save your soul. And so, really all the fingers have to be pointing to you. You have to really kind of get it right in here. So you need, so that is, when it gets really, and of course I understand 100% unequivocally what it's like when you are terrorized, when you are coming through a psychopathic relationship and you are just fearful. Your neurochemicals are all awry. It is just a mess. Your emotions are terrorized. You can't really even feel that you have kind of an exit strategy. And so you just want to give up hope. You're at your wit's end. Maybe doing yourself in is the solution. That is not the solution. It is just a cry for help. It is a cry for help. I need help. So it is oftentimes very difficult for people to express that. So for like Anthony Bourdain, he really sort of exposed and self-disclosed a lot of his thinking, and you can kind of see into a window of someone who has this sort of very, very incredible talent, but also coupled with the substance abuse. So substance abuse, I feel, is very, very it can cause a lot of this ideation or suicidal ideation behavior, which is not normal. In other words, it's the chemical. It is when, as Napoleon Hill once again says, the drink is drinking you, you're not drinking the drink. The drug is drugging you, you aren't doing the drugs. It's, in other words, you've given up control. And so, it is to understand that you need to be able to have boundaries. So if something goes beyond your boundaries, in other words, you are, either drinking to excess, drugging to excess, you're getting too hyper, you're getting too low. Those are extremes. And so you need to kind of balance those and not covet those extremes. So extreme success can bring on stress. And so when you're healing, and kind of going through some personal growth spurts, it sometimes makes people feel very uncomfortable. So when things are getting good, they're like, oh my, they enter into the freak out zone. And so they feel that they can't maintain it, or that it's getting scary, or I'm going to new places unknown here. And so rather than, saying, okay, now I can pull it in. But when it gets really, really bad, when things seem like things are hopeless, it is time to really understand that it's just a cry for help. It's a desire, it's a thirst, it's a hunger for more information. It's to say, I'm in, the sinking pool. I'm in the quicksand. I'm in the emotional quicksand. And so it's to say that and then say, okay, I can and I will get myself on land, and this will get better. And I need to take action and get assistance. So there's no shame in that, but it is to know that you need to express that. You need to come formulate the words and dial the phone number, etc., and begin to do something about it. It is to not sit and wallow in this fear. It is not to sit and wallow in the planning. It is a very, very, very sad and horrific thing. Anthony Bourdain, I mean, anyone who, knows him, as well as Kate Spade, I mean, beautiful, creative, productive, lovely person, why would her deep and dark thoughts get the best of her? It is because we can't think like them. We can only, witness their behavior. And so myself not being of that mental illness, it is to say, within their mental illness, most generally, a bipolar disorder, when that ideation becomes reality, it is to understand that these people have just such painful thoughts and behaviors that they cannot take it anymore. And so that is a very, very sad and sorrowful thing. And it is to know that it is for them to get the relief in professional settings where they can be assisted. And to, especially those people who are of such status, who can afford the doctors and the treatments. And, sometimes it is the substance abuse. And as you can see in Anthony Bourdain, the amount of hard liquor that he's drinking, the amount of the beers that he was drinking throughout his series. I mean, it was. I don't know if there was ever a time, maybe several decades ago. I don't think you could really drink like that or smoke on TV. So it's like you don't want to witness that sort of self-sabotaging behavior. So it's important for you, as an astute viewer and consumer of information, it is to be able to see those patterns and being able to, identify within yourself if you have a like resonance or not a like resonance. But then how important it is to surround yourself with people, situations, events, and experiences that will uplift you and challenge you a little bit. Baby steps are the beautiful thing. And that is really my advice. I hope you can, if you are grieving for his loss, I